Hello, Mr. Bermise.
Oh, and hello, Stevie. We're back at it again.
We're back, baby.
We're back, baby.
Talking about Star Trek.
Talking about Star Trek. Talking about Star Trek. Doing a little dance. Yes, can't wait. It's been one heck of a week waiting for the second episode. This procedural drama.
This Trek trope of a courtroom Trek drama.
So much courtroom, so much drama. Loved it. So many arguments made. Witnesses called to the stand. My fave.
Let's start the show.
Let's do it.
Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Welcome to Set Phasers, a highly logical Star Trek podcast. We are your hosts, Stevie Manns.
And I, Aki Bermise. Sorry. I thought I would do a dramatic thing, but it feels weird.
Well, it felt weird from here, too.
I'm so glad. Today's started 4222623.4, and we're talking about Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 2, entitled Ad Astra. They pronounce it Aspera, which I think is terrible. Ad Astra per Aspera is how I would say it.
Indeed.
But I'm not on the show. Whatever. I don't know. What should we talk about? I'm ready to get right into the show, but we should mention anything?
I think we should just run it down.
Let's run it down, then.
It's time to run it down.
Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me?
I'd really love to. So, last episode, we did the whole Spock, he steals the ship and all this business, and Pike's on this 3-day vacation because he was talking to Una at the beginning episode with this mysterious thing, I gotta go find her. She's not responding, and maybe I gotta talk to her face to face. So, this is all about Una Chin Riley's court-martial or court case. We find out whether or not she's going to be able to stay in Starfleet. Now, we get a little flashback to begin with that is Una as a child living where we find out that she came from, and she's been injured, and her parents are arguing about taking her to the hospital because she has a broken leg because they don't want anyone to find out that she's an Illyrian, that she's got these Illyrian genetics. And then we see them in present day, and we've got Captain Patel, who I did a little digging, was indeed the same actor who was engaged in flagrante delicto with Captain Pike last season before he decided to return to work, and then the betrayal at the season's end when she shows up to arrest Una. So Captain Patel is across from Una, and she's like, hey, we're going to give you this plea deal. Basically, if you plead guilty to being an Illyrian and doing the genetic modifications, which are not allowed in Starfleet, we'll give you a dishonorable discharge and no prison time. You get to hang out in the Federation. You can be a free citizen, and we'll seal the record. And she has what I described as a, quote, punk-ass lawyer who next to her says, it's a good deal. And even Una's like, shouldn't we talk about this in private? And he's like, sure. So we get the sense that, Una's not getting great representation here, and the Starfleet is trying to force her into a corner. Meanwhile, Captain Pike has traveled to a world in the Volterra Nebula, seeking this person they spoke about in the first episode, and the air is bad for him, and he's got a breather, and he's really trying to tough it out, and he's waiting in this office, and he's not being seen by this attorney, I guess. He's waiting, and they're trying to force him to give up because he can't, even with the rebreather or whatever, the mask, he can't stay in that for long, but he says, try me, and basically starts to pass out, trying to hold his breath to see this person who we are introduced to, Counselor Nira Katul. There's weird subtext here, but basically she and Una go way back, and Pike has to do a hell of a lot of work to convince her to take this case because she's not interested and she hates the Federation. She makes that very clear. and she's very mad at Una for some perceived slight in the past. But Pike is able to win her over with this notion that this could help other Illyrian cases, which is apparently what Counselor Cthulhu is very much interested in and is considered one of the greatest counselors in the sector, galaxy, I don't know. You call it whatever you want. Anyway, he managed to make that work. She calls him a piece of work. He agrees, but she hasn't said no. So then Cthulhu goes to visit Una in their cell. They have a really awkward reunion. Apparently, it's been 25 years. And Cthulhu's like, I told you so. I told you you'd wind up arrested by the Federation. So there is that history there that's pointed at. But they finally sit down with Batel, and they decide, we're not taking this agreement. We are going to take it to court. Batel, upset, goes to mess with beautifully coiffed and well put together Captain Pike as he's cooking in his... Is that his quarters, or does he just have a giant kitchen he likes to hang out in? Wow. Wow, dude. He's got a kitchen with an island in it in his quarters.
It's bigger than the TNG Enterprise, which was quite big, and Picard didn't have that.
Yeah. Picard had a ready room and a nice little coffee table set up. But hey, man, Pike, he likes to cook, and he probably was like, you know what? Set this thing up so it's mostly kitchen, so I can entertain. So anyway, they confront each other. Batel basically says, I can't believe whoever you found for Una is going to have her reject the deal, because now things are going to get much worse. How much worse? I'm so glad you asked, because when Una and Cthulhu go up in the, judge's quarters or whatever you call it, the prosecution arrives, but Batel arrives not alone, but accompanied by someone by the name of Vice Admiral Pasalk, and basically informs him that now that the deal has been dropped, Starfleet is going to, let me write down this, genetic modification violation. She's now being charged with 2 counts of sedition. A recommended penalty is dishonorable dismissal and 20 years imprisonment in a Federation penal colony. Now, I thought about this overnight because I was like, how bad could a Federation penal colony really be? It's probably pretty nice. So Una is super incredulous about this, but Cthulhu points out, this is later as they're talking to themselves, that this is Starfleet trying to make an example of her because they want to make it clear where they stand. So they call their first witness, Admiral April, who apparently is the person who sponsored Una's becoming Starfleet in the first place, and she was one of his officers, and one of his officers, probably his greatest officer, because he said he promoted her faster than any other officer he had. They get him on the stand, and Cthulhu, how can you describe a court case? By making a series of powerful connective arguments showing how, as a captain, Admiral April defied General Order 1/the Prime Directive when it seemed like it was purposeful. She shows that Admiral April flaunts even the most highly held Starfleet rule as a captain at his discretion when there are people whose lives he would save, etc., etc. There's all these objections and watch yourself, counselor kind of business happens. And Admiral April, the point of it is that he says that if he had known that Una was an Illyrian, he would not have sponsored her becoming part of Starfleet. And he says even though she was one of his greatest officers, he stands by that, but he walks off in a huff. Later, he meets Pike in Pike's room, and Pike pours him a drink, and Admiral doesn't take it. He's like, you didn't let me finish what I wanted to say on the stand, even though Pike wasn't the one who did the cross-examination. He's like, and that's too bad no one heard about that. And he storms out. Angry Admiral April. Hey. Meanwhile, I don't know how best to describe this, but La'an is meanwhile is helping the counselor. A is like an aide to her as she's staying on the ship. Apparently everyone was staying on the Enterprise, including Batel. I don't fully understand what was going on there, but she is trying to find out how the information got leaked that Una was an Illyrian, because they all found out at the same time, only I don't remember what the time frame is, but recently, basically La'an tries to unilateral, what do you call it? What is the thing that we had in America in 2001? You remember? Private Act?
No.
Patriot Act. She basically tries to Patriot Act her way through everyone's private logs, and she is stood up to and put on the back foot by a young ensign. Uhura says, you cannot do this, and breaking the law is not going to help your friend. So there's a little bit of tension in that scene, I would say. Meanwhile, the court case goes on. The defense, Cthulhu, calls Dr. Mbenga, Spock and La'an to come be character witnesses. We got a sweet, the thing in court cases where they like, as the counselor walks past the person that they're doing cross-examination on, it turns into another person answering the same question. We got all that. It was very sweet, and we got some very sweet things mentioned, and we ended up on Spock, and Spock had his shining Spocky moment in this episode. Basically, they're as character witnesses for Una, but Spock is able to, they keep asking everyone, did they think that, number one, Una was hiding anything? And Spock says, I did think she was hiding something. What does he say? A penchant for Gilbert and Sullivan, which is very goofy. Anyway, if you listen closely, there's a little bing as he raises his eyebrow at that, which I thought was maybe too much, but I liked it. Maybe a goofy thing to do. So, La'an also is called to the stand, and she says that there's a lot of stuff about La'an being mentored by Una and the feelings of hurt that she has from the lack of trust. But there's also this other subcurrent that's brought up by Patel earlier on, which is how long has Pike known that Una is an Illyrian? Because if he knew, if Nixon knew, Ag knew. Do you know what I'm saying? It's got a Watergate thing going on. Like, if it's a conspiracy, why would you know anything about Watergate?
I do know about Watergate, but who's Ag?
So Agnew is Spiro Agnew was Nixon's new vice president. And so when they were trying to, I don't know how this is interesting to people, but basically they were saying if Nixon knew about this, then Agnew also knew. But the thing that Gil Scott-Heron says in his song is if Nixon knew, Agnew.
All right.
You're welcome. Yeah. Hey. It's a pretty exciting time in American politics.
I barely know about the Watergate scandal, just the point that something to do with the Democratic National Party and someone broke into something and
yes.
Nixon knew about that and basically that's it. That's what I got.
You've got the gist of it. So anyway, Cthulhu finishes her cross-examination, and before Una they bring Una to the stand to say a few things about this is Cthulhu's brilliant thing, but we don't realize it. She brings Una up to explain her situation as a child. She was an Illyrian living in a colony that was run by Starfleet, so they couldn't say who they were, so they had to keep their practices and their culture underground, and they were persecuted by other people who said that it was like if you were thought to possibly be Illyrian, you could be persecuted. At first it was words, but then it was violence, so they had to keep it secret. And she tells the story of breaking her leg and not being able to go to a doctor because she didn't want to be found out, etc., etc. And then the reason she came to Starfleet was that she wanted to be all that she could be, for lack of a better word. Point is, she gets her on the stand. She says all that. In comes big badass, I forgot his name already, Vice Admiral Pasalk. It's very close to Patah for my taste. Pasalk basically cross-examines, and what he gets to is, did Pike know about this? And is this more than simply just Una having violated the rule of law, but also Pike, if he's involved, then it becomes conspiracy, not unlike Watergate. So he's trying to figure out, does this go all the way to the top of the Enterprise? And wants Una to say how long Pike has known, and it comes out that Pike has known for 4 months. 4 months before this was found out, Pike had known, so he had been harboring her. Harboring, an important word to think of here, this whole time, knowing that she was an Illyrian when he should have turned her in, according to Starfleet regulations. That is when we flash into Pike, and also, this is what, as a reader of how to write scripts, I've heard is called the dark tea time of the soul. When you hit the bottom, it seems like all is lost. It seemed like Pike was going to be called to the stand, then he'd be arrested, and everything would fail. His career would be over. Patel's out of the picture now. It's his Vice Admiral, this person from beyond. But then, who swoops in to saveth the day? None other than Counselor Cthulhu, who says, oh, very interesting. Would you mind reading, Patel, would you mind reading this passage? And it's all about granting asylum to people. And through the reading of the passage, which I will not go into detail here, but basically Una, in her original testimony, that satisfied the 3 needs for alchemy. Oh my God. Fantasy novels. The 3 needs for amnesty. And so Pike can be seen as having granted her amnesty. And then she makes a pleadful case that the Federation could be better than it was. It can choose to, this 3-judge panel can choose to be punitive to Una for having broken a rule, or they can choose to live up to their highest ideals and reward her with amnesty, considering what she's been through as a Federation citizen and an Illyrian. And everyone goes away, and the judges come back, and they find her not guilty, and she comes back to the ship, and she and Una and Cthulhu reconcile, have a handshake, basically, moment. Everyone is happy to see Una. Stevie and I were watching together, and Stevie was like, someone better hug or I'm going to throw my TV out the window. And fortunately, big old Softy Pike, as soon as he dismisses everybody back to work, immediately embraces number one. Then he goes back to work, and she turns around to look at the ship, as you do when you work on the Enterprise. And here ended the rundown. Woo! Let's chat about that, I guess.
I say, darling, let's do a quick chat about that.
Yes, let's go. Indubitably. We were talking about this as we were watching it, that this has to do with persecution. It's got hints of like dealing with pride, dealing with the Holocaust, dealing with like civil rights, dealing with like all this stuff. And what's interesting, I thought, was that this is the Federation that we know and love, and yet even they were shown to be so very susceptible to their own sort of prejudices and bigotries.
Couldn't agree more. What a wonderful Trek trope to return to the courtroom.
You know what I found interesting? Q never used this argument against Picard. It would have really stymied Picard.
Ooh, sting.
Or did he?
That is a deep cut. Congratulations, Bermise. Why did that get you?
I don't know. I just love this, felt it coming when we watched the first episode, that this second episode was going to be fully in the court. It was going to have all the courtroom stuff, the behind the scenes, I loved, even though I hate him as a character, I loved Pasalk showing up with his weird maneuver to try and bring down this conspiracy. And I said he had the look of a fanatic in his eyes as he spoke. Like he truly wanted, even though he was supposed to be, he's like a Vulcan that's supposed to be emotionless, he had that look in his eyes as if he was out for blood and justice.
Yes.
And then finally, the phrase ad astra per aspera has a personal significance for me because my mother started a school in the 90s here in Brooklyn, and the motto of that school was ad astra per aspera, which they translate here to be to the stars through hardship. And around the Burmese kitchen table, it was to the stars despite adversity, which is essentially the same thing. So anyway, really loved that. What had such a deep tie-in to this episode. It feels very in keeping with the Star Trek theme. Here, this idea of inclusion brought so strong here in the second episode.
We had deep cuts to TOS, we had deep cuts to TNG, and we have deep cuts to Aki Bermise himself.
Whoa! Look at you laying it out there. Whoa!
I tried.
Oh my goodness. That was big host energy.
Thank
I really
you.
like that. You really summed that up in a beautiful way.
Working on it.
Nice.
Working on
nice
my
turn of
host
phrase.
energy.
No. That's just what you do. Do we have...
Yes, there were hundreds. Let's go.
Well, I figured. Here we are once again at the Set Phasers news desk. We go immediately to Stevie Mans at the Easter egg desk. Stevie, how are you doing today?
Well, hi there, Augie. I'm doing well. How are you?
Marvelous.
It is great to be here back on the set of Strange New World Star Trek Season 2, Episode 2. This fabulous Trek trope of a courtroom drama, as I may have said earlier.
So, the Trek tropes, courtroom dramas, they belong together. We start in TOS, the classic menagerie, which was a two-parter, in fact. And then we had The Measure of a Man, which you will recall is about Data in The Next Generation.
Yes, indeed.
And then following in Deep Space Nine, an Inquisition.
Yes.
Inquisition. And then we had the memorable trials in the films The Voyage Home and The Undiscovered Country, as you rightly pointed out, when we were live texting each other. So I guess, let's see, Picard missed out on the courtroom drama, as did Voyager and Enterprise.
Did Voyager never have a courtroom thing? That's so crazy to me. I feel
how could they have if they were stuck out in the Delta Quadrant?
I just feel like there was some time that Janeway had to defend 7 of 9 for something. This is
Probably.
maybe just a memory that I'm having. And
You could Google it.
Picard never had to do it for the whole episode, but he dealt with Q, who was always like putting humanity on trial. Are you Googling it?
I am Googling it.
If you want to know,
you can Google that.
Google that.
If you want to know, you can Google that.
Discovery, I suppose, had one. Unification Part 3.
Of course, Unification Part 3, yes.
TNG had another one, A Matter of Perspective. Riker accused of destroying an entire space station simply because he is too much of a horn dog. Distant Origin in Star Trek Voyager, a rare trial episode where one of our heroes isn't put to task for an alleged crime, but more of a scientific debate when Commander Chakotay is presented to an academic board as proof that the Voth, a powerful dinosaur-esque species from the Delta Quadrant, have evolutionary roots on Earth, contravening generations of religious dogma in their society. So I was incorrect. There are far more than that. Oh, and Devil's Due, which was a very goofy episode in TNG's 4th season, where Picard and the crew are tasked with dealing with the planetary property dispute against the mysterious Ardra. Do you remember that one?
Sort of, yes.
Very camp, yes. She claimed to be the literal devil of Ventax 2, and in fact she was a bit of a scammer.
Yes.
Anyway, love the courtroom dramas and the Trek tropes. We had an old school Earth flag when Captain Patel was talking to Una. We see several flags behind them, including the IDIC flag representing Vulcan. We see United Earth flag, a reminder that the local government of Earth has existed since the time of Enterprise in the 22nd century. Indeed. San Francisco, obviously, we head back to Starfleet Academy, established since the original series, and the first time we actually saw the home of Starfleet and the Golden Gate Bridge was in Star Trek The Motion Picture, and subsequently, fun fact, every single Star Trek TV series has returned to San Fran at least once. So this was that. We had lots of Captain April's backstory, which was rather fun. He sponsored Una's application. He violated the Prime Directive / General Order 1 in 22, 46 and 48 while in command of the Enterprise.
Yes, indeed.
Promoted Una faster than anyone before her. And let's see, lots of visual details from the Menagerie and Court Martial from TOS, those 2 episodes, including a ringing around physical bell that brings the court to session, a small yellow data tape that reads the legal charges, which I laughed at with you because I was like,
very funny that they're using
floppy
cassette
discs.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, which in fact actually did precede the floppy disk.
Truly, indeed.
Yeah, meta in so many ways. The dress uniforms worn by the crew for the formal occasion. Internally, Star Trek Strange New Worlds costume designer Bernadette Croft and her team refer to these uniforms as the Menagerie uniforms, so literally calling it back. And the chair on which the witnesses sit has that round glowing platform underneath their hand. So 2 other things to point out. When Spock first meets Una, he acknowledges that he met her on his first day as an ensign on the Enterprise and jokes that she was hiding her affinity for Gilbert and Sullivan. And these 2 comments refer to the 2019 Short Treks episode Q&A, which chronologically also defines this as the earliest moment that we've seen Spock on screen in his Starfleet career. Fun fact.
Wild.
Let's see. And that, by the way, if you're interested, little nerd fact, that short episode was written by Michael Chabon, Picard co-creator, before Strange New Worlds was formally greenlit. Fun fact.
Fun fact.
And the ending, by the way, not only saves Una, but you'll love this, you Deep Space Nine nerd. It saves Deep Space Nine canon. Because, so in the end, we know that Una was absolved of all of the charges, thanks to this loophole that suggests that she was seeking asylum in Starfleet. But the judges make it clear that regulations must persist, meaning that Starfleet does not reverse its anti-genetic engineering laws at this time. And why, do you ask? Is this relevant? This is relevant because in the Deep Space Nine episode, Dr. Bashir, I presume, we learn that Julian Bashir was secretly genetically modified by his parents when he was young, jeopardizing his Starfleet career the same way Una's has, and was put in peril here. But Dr. Bashir, I presume, takes place in 2373, a full 114 years after the events of this Strange New World episode.
Yes.
Una is saved, and DS9 canon is saved.
Point and counterpoint.
Indeed, much like a courtroom drama. Haha.
Aki, that is it from me. It is back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much. Let's go immediately to quotable moments.
Quotable moments. What do you got?
I have a few. The first one that comes to mind is Cthulhu saying to Pike, "Congratulations, you've discovered empathy. Let me know when the rest of your Federation catches up."
Good one.
Chile.
I knew you were stubborn. I just didn't think you were stupid.
Again, Cthulhu. Mwah, just really hitting it. Let's see. Oh, well, there were two wonderful moments. Both of them feature Cthulhu. I definitely liked in the courtroom, she says, after making this big thing, she says, "If a law is not just, then I ask, how are we supposed to trust those who created that law to serve justice?"
Did you have one more? I've got one more.
I do.
Una, put me on the stand. Let them see that being an Illyrian doesn't change who I am as an officer. And Nira goes, "Are you being funny? You were never funny."
Wow, that was good.
That was good.
Okay, I guess I'm like soft old Pike. Because when Cthulhu's talking to La'an about how she's a Nunyan Singh and all these things, and maybe she feels that because of how she is, could be a danger, she says, not to worry. And then La'an says, "You don't know." And then Cthulhu says, "But I do." That's how they make us feel. They look down at us for so long that we begin to look down at ourselves. Genetics is not destiny, she says. I just happen to remember that part.
Indeed. All right, I actually have one bit of news.
Have you... break it!
Break!
Around the galaxy.
This isn't good news.
Oh.
So brace yourselves.
I'm bracing.
Brace. Star Trek Prodigy has been cancelled.
Oh,
it was
no.
renewed for a second series and has in fact been cancelled. So that's a real shame. And it will also be removed from Paramount Plus in days as it seeks a new home. Quite odd. Variety, I think, broke that story today. Today is June 23rd. Yeah, and it also, so Paramount is pulling various shows in the coming days, including that new Grease thing and Queen of the Universe, which I actually really loved. It was a fun drag show. So yeah, I think I believe they've actually produced season 2. They're actually currently in post-production. They've said that the post-production will be completed, signaling that Paramount Plus believes that Prodigy will find a new home without much difficulty. But there you go. Rather sad.
Rather sad, Paramount Plus. What are you doing?
I know.
You poor dumb fools.
Well, anyway.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Yes. Anyway, that's all from the news. Not the best news, but still news nonetheless.
Well, you know what? There's some other news, and that's that there'll be a show next week. So let's talk about next time.
Oh, I have one more bit of news.
Oh, what?
Sorry.
Break it!
Sorry. New Star Trek Discovery Black Alert strategy board game announced as of this week.
What?
I know, it's crazy. And why would they do that when they are cancelling the bloody show? Who the fuck knows? It's been 5 years since the crew of the USS Discovery visited the Mirror Universe late in the show's first season. But this year, a new strategy game centered around that Terran Empire encounter is coming from publisher WizKids. It's a new card-based strategy board game, gosh, that's hard to say, pitting players against each other as crew members of either the USS Discovery or the ISS Charon. So there we are. What do I think?
Do you think Lorca will be in the game?
I'm sure he will. So you might be right. Lorca is back.
He's back, baby. I'll take it on a technicality. He's back in canon. Okay, well, that's cool. I might buy that.
There you go.
And by might, probably. And by probably, I mean
you will.
definitely.
And does that mean that we can play it?
Yes, of course. But I get to be Lorca.
Of course, you could be Lorca. And we might even play it with our patrons. That could be a game, a fun thing to do with patrons.
Lovely.
Somehow,
lovely.
virtually. Who knows how.
There, yes. Well, let's go.
There. Well, that's all from the news. And should we go to next time?
Yeah, next time.
Next time on Set Phasers.
All right, well, listen here. Next time on Set Phasers, we'll be talking about episode 3 of season 2 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, entitled Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Creep in this petty pace from day to day.
Hey, look at you. Oh, yes. I love that. I'm really quite tickled. If you like our show, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts at. We have a lot of episodes. We've covered all of Discovery and all of that up to date exists of Lower Decks and all 3 seasons of Picard and Strange New Worlds last season. So please check out the back episodes there and tell your friends about them.
Tell your friends, tell your friends. That is it from me. I'm Stevie Mans.
And I regret that you had to see that outburst. And this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.